As a landscape photographer, I've always been obsessed with wild and remote places. And little did I know, this obsession would see me voyaging on the North Sea and landing on a very distant shore. Tucked away at the very top corner of Britain, rising above the waves of the North Atlantic, is an archipelago renowned for its adorable ponies and woolly sheep, the Shetland Isles. Rugged, windy, exposed, yet teeming with life. I'm accompanied by my two good friends, Will, the archaeologist, and Jamie, the biologist. And I suppose that leaves me to be the photographer.
Right, so after 24 hours of arduous travelling, train, bus, ferry, we finally got to Shetland, and this is the start.
We'll be attempting to hike the entire length of Shetland's mainland, starting from Samba in the south, all the way up to Featherland, the northern tip. So sit back and get comfortable as we walk, camp, and photograph this magnificent land. This is a story about 3 friends and 100 miles. We landed in Lerwick early in the morning, the capital of Shetland, and home to about 7,000 islanders. We officially began our journey at Samba Lighthouse, some 25 miles south of Lerwick, the most southern point of Shetland. We had to first hike into the peninsula, which got us into a nice walking rhythm. However, combined with prolonged travel, took quite a bit out of us. But regardless, it begins. Behind us in this photo is Samba Airfield, offering 8 to 10 flights a day to the Scottish mainland. We had to trespass an airstrip with clearance, of course. Shortly after, we left the main road and took our first bite of the stunning Shetland seascape. We simply had to brake here and take it all in. Although it wasn't the expansiveness that inspired me, rather it was something quite insignificant. Will had no idea why I was doing photographing the sand, but this one is my first image, and I hope it explains. We were supposed to camp here last night, but the landowner wasn't really a fan of that. But he was really nice, politely asked to move. So we're literally 10 minutes away from here. And it's really beautiful. I'm going to take a long exposure to give it more of a minimalist look. I'm expecting silky smooth water with these pinnacles, these sea stacks, just standing out from the water as shapes, as patterns, as objects. And one more thing, whenever you're taking a long exposure, always make sure the viewfinder is shut so that light won't come through the viewfinder and onto the sensor, casting some weird artifacts in an image. I'm at f11 and I think having a 10-stop ND filter gives me an exposure of a minute or so. Yeah, it should be really nice. Yeah, this shot doesn't really work because it's unbalanced. The left-hand side is just so dark and heavy, and there's nothing interesting whatsoever in the sky above. An average image, but worth documenting, I suppose. Will and Jamie were already up by the time they got back to camp. We are near a large stretch of beach, and with rain clouds clearing, it would be rude not to have a dip in the sea. And yes, I was trying to do a cheeky dive since Jamie was filming, and of course I lost my glasses. And just to be clear, that the glasses one wears. Our destination of the day was Channelwick. We were mainly following B-roads and the walking part wasn't too interesting. But soon after we departed from Spiggy, we spotted a whole colony of seals, sunbathing on another beach a few hundred yards from us. Observing and filming them was an absolute gift. Travelling further north, we visited St. Ninian's Isle, connected to the mainland by a long air, Old Norse for a gravel bank. During winter time, strong waves would wash most of it away, leaving the island inaccessible by foot. We were lucky to be visiting during the high summer. We had a lovely picnic there. We got to Channelwick battered from the day's hike, but just in time for some top-notch football commentary from Will.
Commentary. Okay, well currently Christensen is just f***ing around on the grass like an absolute baby bitch. They've brought Denmark's f***ing health advisor on. He looks like a Swiss twat. He's drinking water because he thinks that'll help him with his cramp, but as we learned earlier, what really helps is a Mowbray pork pie.
A local fiddle maker kindly let us pitch up one of his fields by the beach. It was a very sheltered spot from the elements, but not so with Arctic terns, who kept on dive bombing us whenever we were outside. The beach was mainly well-rounded pebbles, which make some rather pleasant sounds, tumbling inside the crisp waves. Larger boulders and buried slabs dotted all around the beach, which made for an interesting exercise for photography. But maybe my wave dodging skill needs some practice as well. We shared a lot of banter before we turned in, football related or otherwise. How do you like this place?
I like this place a lot.
Any reasons?
I like my body fits in the tent. This is my tent. This with my money. No one can say that. You may say that about your tent, and Jamie may say that about his, but this is mine.
What, that
Did you buy your tent with your money?
I bought my tent.
With your money?
Yeah.
I'm not attacking you.
There's bugs all over it though.
Mine's good right now. Mine's bugless. It's because I smoke.
Our next stop was Skobelbeck. Route looks very straightforward on the map, but we wanted to explore more of Shetland's wild and rugged coastline. So we ditched the A road and slowly worked our way towards the sea. We stopped at a lovely farm shop along the way. In the distance, cliffs of Bressie are catching some alluring light, so I broke out my longer lens and did a quick exposure before I devoured my lunch. So it's early afternoon now and we finally made it to the farm shop, and just as we stopped I noticed this gorgeous light on a distant cliff. It's a really minimalist shot, and I think I'll crop it down to a square image. The reason I think it's going to work is because we have plenty of negative space in our image. We have the sea at the bottom and the sky above it, and they're just all supporting elements for a subject. There's lit cliff right in the middle. Yeah, I think quite love it. As we got closer and closer to the coast, we realised that we have made the right decision. Seeing we were not too far from Goldwick, I decided to stay and do some photography while my mates hiked on.
So it's officially evening here now in the Shetland Isles, and the sun is still very high up, which is really nice, which gives us a lot of time to work with. And we're out to this spectacular location with beautiful, stunning, epic sea stacks. They are fantastically shaped, like swords and pinnacles, pointing towards the sea and towards the sky. Absolutely stunning and gorgeous. It was quite tricky to frame up a shot because this terrain is quite difficult to navigate. It's still not perfectly visually balanced and pleasing, but I think I'm going to go for it because it's quite late, and Will and Jamie were off about half an hour ago, trying to get to the campsite early. So I need to catch up with them very soon. So I'm doing a long exposure to get the sea silky smooth and hopefully reveal some permanent patterns within the sea. And at the background we have a really nice island. The unique thing about this island is on the right hand side of it we have a straight vertical drop straight into the sea, so it looks like a cruiser or a battleship, more like towards the right hand side, and I think it's quite a nice touch to our image and to the scenery. Now I was thinking that by including the sea on the right hand side of the frame will create this sort of unbalance, another layer of unbalance in the background. But it would be a shame not to include such a wonderful cliff, such a unique shape, such a perfect work of creation. So I decided to put it in, even though it may cause some theoretical problem with the image, but I don't care. It's just so amazing.
After some photography fun, it was time to catch up with my mates. We re-established contact when I got to a tiny coastal village with the cutest ponies. But I think I might have startled one of them. Sorry, little fella. And there's more. Right in the bay lie several seals bathing, feeding and playing. I set up my camera and they seem to have paid the least attention to me at all. An absolute privilege to behold in such proximity. After a brief call, I heard my mates had set up camp at Wick of Burland, a mile short of Goldwick. When I finally caught up, I could totally see why. Not even mentioning the dramatic cliffs, the Wick of Burland turned out to be an Iron Age settlement dating back all the way between 500 BC and AD 200. The stone mound you can see now is the remains of a once towering broch, a prehistoric castle. It's simply a marvel to dwell so closely with a piece of history from thousands of years ago. We settled into the night in awe and wonder.
A tiny wooden bridge spans across the wick. Once crossed over, we were utterly surprised by some more dramatic seascapes. Here's a shot with Jamie on top to show the sheer scale of these cliffs. It would be rude not to stop and grab a shot.
Hello there, I hope you can hear me. The wind is picking up a bit, so I apologise for the noise. And I have indeed stopped again while Jamie and Will walk on. But it's just so spectacular. We're still walking on the same coastline as yesterday, and this place just keeps on giving. It just keeps on giving. So right in front of me is another spectacular and gorgeous seascape and the rock formation. If you've seen photos of, or you've been to Wales, there's a sea stack called the Triple Mountains or Triple Peaks or the Dragon's Back or something, and this is that on steroid. It's fantastic. Now, let me show you what we've got here. It's absolutely spectacular. So what I'm going to do is a panorama. I'll be starting from this cliff over here, right behind you, and I'll be stopping at the other side. So I've had a call from Jamie, and apparently they got to Goberwick now and they're waiting for me. I feel really bad, but this scenery is unrepeatable, and it's just so gorgeous. It's overwhelming, and I'm shooting now a horizontal frame, and I think it will be nicer than the panel because I've got a polarizer on to get rid of all the glares, all the reflections, to make the ocean look more blue, which is what it's supposed to be without the reflection. And I've got a 10-stop ND filter on, and I think it will look absolutely amazing. And that gives me an exposure of 2 minutes and 40 seconds. So I'll wait now. It's about a minute in. So yeah, I'm just waiting for the shot to be finished, and I'll be packing swiftly and hopefully catching up with them in Goberwick. It's fantastic. I really don't want to leave this place, but at the same time I don't want to keep them waiting. So yeah, I'll see you in a bit. So I found another shot. Again, it's a really lovely sea stack in the middle, and quite far away from the land. It's not a big one. It's not one of those magnificent piece of rock in the middle of the sea. It's a rather small one. And it's well eroded. But I really like the shape of it, and I love how there's literally nothing around it. So the sea stack is my sole subject of this photograph, and to make this work, make this kind of minimalist photographs work, you need a lot of breathing space, a lot of empty space to contrast your subject, and that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm placing nothing but ocean and sky behind it and surrounding it. I'm taking a long exposure again to rid all textures from the ocean, which I think will cause distraction in the image. So that gives me a 1 minute exposure. I'm focusing on the sea stack f11 ISO 64. 1 minute, 5-second timer. Yes, very minimalist, very nice. I love this image. I love it.
These two images caused us much delay, which would result in another long and arduous day on the road. Sorry guys. We stopped at Scalloway for lunch, the historical capital of Shetland, but with mileage and rain clouds pressing on us again, we had to make a move. Entirely north at Dingwall, the name of which I suspect has a similar origin as Dingwall not far from Inverness. We arrived at Waysdale fairly late into the day. A friendly local farmer accommodated us on one of his fields. It wasn't the best of nights, but one needed rest, a lot of rest, after such a long day. Our next leg was to Bray, which in lowland Scots is the word for a slope of a hill. But here on Shetland, it's of Old Norse origin, meaning a broad isthmus, a narrow piece of land connecting two larger areas. I decided to lend well my walking sticks during this section, which I still regret to this very day.
Oh, I missed you so much. I missed you so much.
Reunited with my four mates, we were in for a massive treat at the most northerly fish and chip shop in Britain. And not gonna lie, it was absolutely scrumptious. We also visited the local pub afterwards, and with permission, pitched up by a pebble beach. It was the most relaxing night we've had for a while.
Hey.
Happy.
The Ness of Hillswick is a picturesque peninsula just south of Hillswick. It was a splendid day, and Jamie spent it well by completing the circular walk around the Ness. He came back with some gorgeous images, and seeing light was developing, I made the tough decision to hike back onto the Ness for a sunset shoot. It was the Euro Cup final that night. However, there's no match of the day for sunsets.
We've been through some terrible weather, some arduous, some arduous hikes, and some really boring and quite repetitive roadside walking. We met some amazing people who offered us food, shelter, and lifts. So yeah, we shall keep going. It's about 8 in the evening. I'm now just having a wander around the coast looking for photographs. Well, when and Jamie are at this hotel, we were having supper at watching football. It's the final between England and Italy, which is quite big, quite huge. But we have some glorious, absolutely glorious light. So I'm afraid I have to ditch football and embrace sunset.
Embrace, he says, as he nearly falls off a cliff. Sorry, Mum.
So I just had our first glimpse of the epic sea stacks I was looking for. They are truly amazing. I'm walking on very sketchy ground now, so I need to focus a bit more on walking. But I'm really looking forward to this. We can see a gap between the Western Sea and the Western Cloud Bank. So that means the light is going to penetrate through that gap and showering all its brilliance on the entire landscape before us. Truly spectacular. It's going to be fantastic.
I was on the top of, I think, this peninsula, a minute ago, and the view was absolutely spectacular. It was breathtaking. But I wanted to photograph these sea stacks, and they look kind of entangled while I was up there. So I had to take the risk of hiking down and find a better angle to photograph them. And it's a huge risk, but I think it has fulfilled itself. So right here, we're way closer to these sea stacks now, and I'm just picking out my favourite one, which is the one at the distance that's got a little bit of gap between the stone columns, and it's just in such a beautiful, gracious state and shape and stature. So just as I predicted, we have gorgeous sidelights on our sea stacks now, as you probably could make out. There. Oh, wait, there. But I've made a few changes to my composition. I've moved further down the hill towards the right of the sea stacks, because in a previous composition, the little rock on the right is not separated with the middle one. So by moving further down, I'm separating them from each other, which I think will be better for our composition. And I'm taking a long exposure as well, so I've got a 10-stop ND filter on, which gives me about 5 minutes exposure. Yeah, that's about it. F11 focusing on the sea stacks. It's just the camera is exposing right now, so I'm filming this piece while it's exposing. I think it will be quite a nice shot.
We're now less than 15 miles away from our final destination, Featherland Lighthouse. We could have made it in one day, but we set up another camp in between, so we could have more time and save however little energy we had the next day to explore the point. With plenty of time to spare, we decided to be a bit creative choosing the campsite. Hiking away from the only road, we found ourselves a peaceful cove with an unhindered beach. Bomas nest inside the cracks and cliff sides. The tube above their noses bleeds excessive salt due to their seafood diet. There was little wind, and with a thick fog bank approaching from the north, we really felt we were in a different world, and we had it all to ourselves. But the flashing lighthouses would drag us back from imaginations. Under such ethereal settings, they made for excellent subjects for photography. Setting off from camp, we were on the last push towards Featherland, the most northerly point of mainland, the grand finale of our journey. The Featherland fishing station was once one of the busiest on Shetland, dating all the way back to the Viking Age, now lie in utter and complete ruins. One can still make out the indoor fireplace fishermen will have used hundreds of years ago. Featherland Lighthouse,
After 8 days and 100 miles of walking and camping, we are finally here, at the end of our journey. The towering black cliffs reveal the fearsome elements they have faced for the past millions of years. Inside every crevice, countless seabirds nest and nestle. We have done it! From Sumba to Featherland, I got sunburnt, blisters, and an aching body. But the views we saw, the people we met, and the precious time we shared together renders them all insignificant. The black cliffs were still screaming for an image, so I composed one for them. This is my last image from this trip.